My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a forensic accountant. The polished mahogany table in Mr. Davies' office gleamed under the recessed lighting, reflecting the strained expressions of the four people seated around it. My mother, Eleanor, cleared her throat, a sound that always signaled the start of a performance. Her eyes, usually darting with restless energy, settled on me with a manufactured softness that made my skin crawl. Across from her, my father, Richard, shifted in his expensive suit, his gaze fixed on a point just over my shoulder, as if avoiding eye contact would absolve him of whatever was about to happen. "Sarah," Eleanor began, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness I hadn't heard directed at me since I was 8 years old and they wanted me to pose for a family portrait. "We need to talk about your inheritance. It's only fair that we get a share. We are your parents, after all." The words hung in the air, thick and cloying. Mr. Davies, Lillian's longtime estate lawyer, remained impassive, his pen poised over a legal pad, but I saw the subtle tightening around his mouth. My stomach clenched into a cold, hard knot, but I kept my face neutral, a skill I'd perfected over decades. "Fair?" I echoed, the single word a question, a challenge, and a promise. This wasn't about fairness. This was about a pattern of behavior that had defined my entire life, and this time, I wouldn't let it stand. To understand why I wasn't surprised by their demand, you need to understand what forgotten truly meant for me. It wasn't a dramatic abandonment on a doorstep, it was a slow, quiet fade into irrelevance. My parents, Eleanor and Richard, were always busy. Busy chasing the next big business venture, the next social climb, the next exciting distraction. I was an afterthought, a logistical detail in their meticulously planned, self-centered lives. From a young age, I learned to be self-sufficient. Nannies came and went, a revolving door of kind strangers who provided more consistent care than my own parents. By the time I was 10, I was packed off to Northwood Academy, a prestigious boarding school. My parents framed it as an opportunity, a chance for a superior education. In reality, it was a convenient way to keep me out of sight and out of mind. Weekends and holidays were often spent with my Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister, or with the families of boarding school friends whose parents seemed genuinely delighted to have an extra child around. My own parents were always traveling for business or hosting important clients. Birthdays passed with generic cards, if they remembered at all. My 16th birthday, I recall, featured a card with a cartoon dog wearing a party hat, signed by both of them, but addressed to Dear Susan. Susan was the name of my mother's best friend's daughter. I remember holding that card, a small, flimsy rectangle of paper, and feeling a profound emptiness. It wasn't anger, not really. It was just a quiet understanding that I didn't register enough for them to even remember my name. When it came time for college, they offered vague encouragement but no financial support. "You're so bright, Sarah, you'll get scholarships," Eleanor had said, waving a dismissive hand. And I did. I worked 2 jobs throughout my undergraduate years, meticulously budgeting every dollar, determined to prove that I didn't need their help. My degree in accounting, specializing in forensics, was a direct consequence of that need for control and independence. I learned to follow the money, to find the patterns, to uncover the hidden truths in financial records. It was a skill that would serve me well, both professionally and personally. After college, contact dwindled further. A perfunctory holiday text, maybe an email once a year. I stopped trying after a while. The effort was always one-sided, and the emotional cost too high. I built my own life, my own community, far away from their orbit. I found a quiet satisfaction in my work, in untangling complex financial webs, in bringing clarity to chaos. The one person who truly saw me, who truly remembered me, was my maternal grandmother, Lillian. Lillian was a force of nature, sharp, independent, and incredibly kind. She lived modestly in a charming, slightly cluttered house in Vermont, but she had a keen eye for investments. She was the one who taught me to balance a checkbook, who listened to my stories from boarding school, who never forgot my name. Lillian passed away 18 months ago, peacefully in her sleep. Her funeral was small, attended mostly by distant relatives and a few old friends. My parents made a brief appearance, looking bored and uncomfortable, before excusing themselves early for a prior engagement. 6 weeks later, Mr. Davies called me. Lillian had left me everything. Her entire estate, a staggering $11 million, mostly in a diversified investment portfolio, and her beloved Vermont house. Lillian had never trusted Eleanor with money, knowing her daughter's penchant for extravagance and poor financial decisions. Her will was explicit, leaving everything to me, to build the life you deserve, free from the burdens of others. It was a quiet, powerful vindication, a testament to the fact that someone, at least, had truly seen and valued me. 4 months, life settled into a new, comfortable rhythm. I moved into Lillian's house in Vermont, enjoying the quiet, the crisp air, and the sense of belonging. I kept the inheritance private. My parents had no reason to know, and I saw no reason to tell them. Then, about 6 months after Lillian's death, the calls started. The first one was from Eleanor. Her voice, overly sweet, asking about my life. "Darling, it's been too long. I was just thinking about you. How are you doing? Still in that little city apartment?" She didn't know I'd moved. I gave vague answers, cautious. She mentioned how much she missed me, a sentiment that felt entirely hollow. It was the first time she'd called me out of the blue in years. A few weeks later, they showed up unannounced at my old city apartment building. My former landlord, bless her heart, told them I'd moved without giving them my new address. They called, sounding genuinely put out. "Sarah, we drove all this way. We wanted to surprise you. We brought you a housewarming gift." It was a generic, expensive crystal vase, still in its department store box. They expressed concern that I was still living in such a modest place, hinting that I deserved better. They started probing about my financial situation, subtly at first. I deflected, telling them I was doing well, my job as a forensic accountant was keeping me busy. I hoped mentioning my profession, which often dealt with financial malfeasance, might deter them. It didn't. The escalation continued. There was the family obligation dinner at an upscale restaurant they couldn't possibly afford. Eleanor, artfully dressed, lamented their struggles with their latest business venture, an artisanal candle company that, judging by the smell of their samples, produced candles that smelled faintly of burnt sugar and regret. Richard chimed in about their cash flow problems, their unforeseen expenses. They talked about family helping family, their eyes constantly flicking to me, expecting me to offer solutions, or better yet, cash. The untouched plate of expensive scallops in front of me felt like a symbol of their unearned expectations. Then came the direct hint. Over coffee a few days later, Eleanor leaned forward, her voice conspiratorial. "Did Grandma Lillian leave you anything, darling? She was always so fond of you. She had such a knack for investments, you know." I smiled, a tight, polite smile. "She left me her memories, Mom. And her house." I didn't mention the rest. Her face fell, just for a second, a flicker of disappointment before she regained her composure. That was when I knew they were actively looking for what they perceived as their due. The true pressure began a month later. My distant cousin, Brenda, a notorious gossip with a surprisingly efficient network, must have pieced together the public probate records and my move to Lillian's house. Brenda, who was always trying to ingratiate herself with Eleanor, must have spilled the beans. Suddenly, the calls intensified. They weren't subtle anymore. Eleanor called, her voice tight with barely suppressed anger. "Sarah, we heard about Lillian's will. $11 million. And you didn't tell us?" Richard followed with a long, rambling voicemail about their due, sacrifices, and the cost of raising a child. He even mentioned all those years of boarding school tuition, a claim that made me scoff aloud. They implied I owed them, not just for my upbringing, but for the mere fact of my existence. That was when the number stopped looking accidental, and the pattern became undeniable. Their sudden interest, the manufactured affection, the guilt trips, it was all purely transactional. They hadn't forgotten me for years out of malice, but out of self-absorption. Now, with the scent of $11 million in the air, they suddenly remembered they had a daughter. Lillian's quiet warnings about Eleanor's entitlement and Richard's spinelessness echoed in my mind. My grandmother had known exactly what she was doing when she wrote that will. I understood then what was truly happening, and what they really wanted. Not a relationship, not a connection, but a payout. A piece of my future to prop up their failing ventures and lavish lifestyle. My preparation was methodical, a professional habit. I reviewed Lillian's will again, every clause, every phrase. Mr. Davies, Lillian's estate lawyer, confirmed what I already knew. The will was ironclad, explicitly naming me as the sole beneficiary. He advised me on my rights and the legal avenues available should their harassment escalate. I gathered my own evidence of their neglect, the Susan birthday card, old emails showing their minimal contact, the invoices from Northwood Academy clearly showing Aunt Clara's name on the payment records for 3 of my 4 years, and my own university loan documents. These weren't for a lawsuit, not yet, but they were concrete anchors for my resolve. I changed the locks on Lillian's house, put my mail on hold, and blocked their numbers on my phone, only unblocking them for this meeting. And so, we found ourselves in Mr. Davies' office, the stage set for their final, desperate play. Eleanor, after her initial fairness declaration, pressed on. "We're not asking for the whole thing, Sarah. Just a reasonable portion. Think of it as compensation for all the years we invested in you, darling. Boarding school, all those opportunities." Richard, emboldened by his wife's persistence, finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Your mother and I, we've had some setbacks. This could really help us get back on our feet. A few million, maybe?" I took a slow, deep breath, letting the silence stretch for a moment. My voice, when I spoke, was calm, clear, and devoid of emotion. "What exactly do you consider fair, Mom? And what investments are you referring to, Dad?" I looked from one to the other, my gaze steady. "I have the records from Northwood Academy, showing my Aunt Clara paid the tuition for 3 of my 4 years. The final year, I worked weekends at the library to cover it. I have the loan documents for my university education, which I paid myself, working multiple jobs. I also have the birthday card you sent me for my 25th, addressed to Susan. My name is Sarah." Their faces, usually so confident, began to crumple. Eleanor's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Richard's gaze darted back to the space above my shoulder. "Grandma Lillian left her inheritance to me," I continued, my voice unwavering. "She made that very clear in her will. She did so because she knew I would value it, and because she understood the difference between a parent and a biological relation. She knew the sacrifices I made, the independence I built, not because of you, but despite you." I leaned forward slightly, my hands resting flat on the polished table. "There is no share for you. This inheritance is mine, and I will not be giving you any of it. Not a single dollar." Mr. Davies, sensing the moment, intervened smoothly. "My client's position is clear. The will is unambiguous. Any further attempts to pressure or harass Ms. Jenkins, either directly or through third parties, will be considered a breach of her privacy and could lead to further legal action." He then pushed a folder across the table towards them. "This contains a cease and desist order, outlining the boundaries of future contact." Eleanor's face turned a mottled purple. She snatched the folder, her eyes blazing. "You ungrateful child. After everything we did for you. You're cold, Sarah, just like your grandmother." Richard, however, looked defeated, his bravado completely gone. He merely shook his head, looking small and insignificant. They stormed out of the office, their angry murmurs fading down the hallway. I heard Eleanor call me a heartless bitch just before the elevator doors closed. I felt no triumph, only a deep, weary relief. The constant pressure, the subtle manipulations, the manufactured affection, it was finally over. In the days that followed, a flurry of angry texts and voicemails arrived, accusing me of everything from greed to disrespect. I blocked their numbers permanently. They tried to rally other relatives, but most knew the truth about their long-standing neglect. Aunt Clara, bless her, made sure of that. The relationship was severed, definitively and irrevocably. And this time, I knew it was for the best. I returned to Lillian's house in Vermont, the quiet sanctuary she had provided. On my desk, next to my laptop, I kept an old, faded photograph. It was of Lillian and me, taken when I was about 7, sitting on her porch swing, both of us laughing, her arm wrapped tightly around me. In that photo, I wasn't forgotten. I was seen, loved, and cherished. The $11 million wasn't just money, it was freedom. Freedom from the past, and a quiet promise to myself that I would never forget the people who truly mattered.